Welcome to Sportex, where we talk all things relating to the ever evolving sports business industry and the people that make things happen in this vibrant sector. I'm Gerrit Davids, founder of TalkX TV, where we host Sportex as a content channel. And once again, I have the honor to be joined by Emeka Inyadike, who is a director at Digital Sports Africa and Africa Director of Result Sports, a German sports data agency. And Emeka is also wearing many other hats in the like of a director of Van Dyke Sports and Sports Network Africa. And Emeka is here today to talk to us about the latest edition of the African Football Digital Benchmark. Welcome to Sportex, Emeka, and let's start off with giving us a background to the African Football Digital Benchmark and what it is in terms of its purpose.
Thank you very much, Harry. I must say that the Africa Football Digital Benchmark is now 7 years old. We launched it in 2017, and the whole emphasis at the time was to try and look at the evolution of the digital and social media used by clubs and federations and leagues in Africa, and also players, and in fact generally the African sports industry, because we find that African sports fans are very engaged on social media, and for the most part you find that European clubs, American clubs, international sports organizations tap into the African ecosystem and actually actively milk our fans and use them for to serve their own goals, to prove that they have a global fan base, whereas the clubs and federations and institutions in Africa are basically not doing that. So we created the Digital Sports Africa, on the basis of that, for research. First of all, to establish that we have enough of this happening with our local properties. And then we then launched the Africa Football Digital Benchmark. Over the last 3 years, I've been away from the project because I got away onto other global assignments. But it's very exciting that just being back and in my new role, I kind of find that there's been tremendous improvements, and one that has really caught my attention has been the evolution in Tanzania. When we started out, we saw that there was massive activity on social involving clubs in North Africa, especially Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and very little in Sub-Saharan Africa, which was kind of strange, because when we do this research and run these numbers on European club and European leagues, we find that there's a lot of activity in West Africa and Central Africa and East Africa. But then you find that it is not the same when we run it on the local. So you find that in South Africa, and in fact, in the beginning, it was mostly Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, to an extent Algeria, and then of course South Africa, where you have the two Soweto giants, Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, really active. And if I go back to my time at SuperSport, when we started building these social platforms there, we had to compete against Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs. But you find that at the time, initially, if I go back a few years back to around the time of the 2010 World Cup, we always thought that Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs had the most followership in Africa. And then, of course, when we started doing this, we found out that no, the clubs in Egypt and Morocco were actually much more engaged. And then over time, we've realized that the Tanzanian clubs are giving them a run for their money.
Given the significant rise of the Tanzanian clubs, Simba and Yanga, in the AFDB rankings, what factors do you attribute to their rapid digital growth compared to other African clubs, and how can other African clubs replicate their success?
So this is something that, I'm very pleased that, as someone who's a digital pioneer, particularly in African football and sports landscape, I have well over 20 years experience of seeing the evolution the one thing that I've always harped on, which I found out, was that Africans engage a lot more in their local languages or in the language that they are more comfortable with. So you find that for the most part, because we have these major languages that come about as a result of languages that like English, French, Portuguese, and maybe for Equatorial Guinea, Spanish. The major languages that is spoken in Africa. You find that something that goes back even to my undergraduate days when we did some research on actually trying to decipher if there's an African management style. We found that people will speak one language at work, which is English if they're from a British colony. They speak French in French-speaking countries, but when you go just out of the office or even within some of the office spaces, they communicate in their local languages. I've been to Senegal where we went for a FIFA project, and we went to a place just within Dakar called Bikini for a production, and we've realized that all the players that we met there, they were more comfortable speaking in their local language than speaking in French. And when you go to a country like Ethiopia, everyone speaks Amharic. Yes, people speak English, but generally people speak that. So what has been responsible for Tanzania has been the fact that in Tanzania, Swahili is their first language. And so Yanga and Simba, they are like how you have Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs in Soweto and in Johannesburg and South Africa generally. They have the most fans. So you find that they communicate in Swahili, and so they're very well engaged with their fan base. So when you go on social media and try and communicate in English and French, you're not actually reaching the people and you're not engaging with them. In North Africa, why Al Ahly is so big is because going back to 2009, from the time of the Arab Spring, they transformed the fans, went from there onto their social platforms, and they communicate in Arabic, and that's what you find. So way back as 2010, I could already see that Al Ahly were on a different level, and now you can see from the AFDB they have over 50 million fan base, and this puts them within the top 20 in the world. So the Al Ahly of Egypt can rank with the biggest clubs in the world. They're sitting in the same space as the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and all the other clubs in the top 20 in the world. Al Ahly is there, and the reason they're there is because they are able to communicate with their fans in their language.
Yeah. So given the rise of the East African clubs, your North African clubs consistently dominate the top ranks of your AFDB annual report. So as you've started to allude to Al Ahly, in terms of what strategies have they employed to build such strong digital presence, and what can clubs from other regions learn from them?
I think the key, and this is something that is a big problem in Africa, is that clubs like Al Ahly are properly run professional sports organizations. They don't cut corners. They don't look for ways to appoint their friends into this position. They employ qualified people and put them into work on these things. And that the entire digital ecosystem is so professional that you cannot game it. It's a system that either you understand it or you don't. So it's the general problem in Africa where you talk about bringing people who are educated, and sometimes people mistake education for a degree. No, it's not. It's not a degree. It means that if you want to work as a digital strategist, you've got to study and understand how it works, understand how the algorithms work, understand what each of the platforms are meant for, understand that on Instagram it's not a place for you to write stories. It's a place for you to, yes, don't get me wrong, there's Instagram stories, but it's a place for you to use as much of your photos and videos to the right way. Understand that YouTube is a video channel, and and has to be used. Understand what X, which is a former Twitter, that is not a place where you write very long text. It's a place where you are able to to fill in immediately and engage and catch people's attention with very short, crispy communication. Understand that Facebook obviously is where you can do a lot more, and also understand which demographics you find in each of those places. And our platform generally takes on every major um, social platform. So I mean, we've included platforms like Threads, which is new, and which you'll find that. And one thing we've found is that every time there's been a new platform, Alali has been the first to jump on it, and they jump on it in the very right way. You find that in Tanzania, X is the biggest platform, and Instagram. They're very actively engaging. There's some clubs in Africa that don't even have YouTube channels, and YouTube has changed. YouTube is a different platform today. YouTube has the ability to do long form video, short form videos. Practically, YouTube is a combination of everything you find on Instagram, you find on TikTok, and you also find that at the end of the day, you want to reach out to millennials, you want to reach out to Gen Zs, you want to reach out to older folks like us who've been very much, who are probably going to be found more on Facebook. So the reality is that African clubs have got to wake up and realize that they complain that they don't have sponsorship. You cannot get sponsorship if you cannot deliver value to the sponsor, and the sponsor wants to see what your digital footprint is. They want to understand who's following you, what's the demographics, and how they can engage with them in order for them to pay you. So the reality is that on the one hand, you complain that you're not getting sponsors, but there's no brand today that doesn't have a ground game around the digital platform. The days when you had to go around on the street and get physical membership. Remember in South Africa, Kaiser Chiefs had branches all over the country. I remember I was going to Durban for Soccer X some years ago, and we're riding on a bus to the stadium for a game between Kaiser Chiefs and Golden Arrows, and I remember all the guys who came for Soccer X from the UK asking me, like, why do we have more Kaiser Chiefs fans on the street with their yellow shirts than Golden Arrows, who are supposed to be the home team? Well, that's how good Kaiser Chiefs' ground game was. But they were also quick to evolve once it was clear that the social media space has become a lot bigger. In Nigeria, you'll find that there isn't. It's just a Yimba from Nigeria amongst the big clubs that was able to make it into our top 75 ranking, which is a crying shame, because Nigerians we have the biggest population in Africa. We have very iconic clubs, Shooting Stars, Rangers, who were really massive insurance, who were massive clubs before Enyimba became a force. Enyimba only, I would say at the start of this century, 2002 and 2003, when they won their 2 African titles. So you find that clubs in Cameroon, for instance, like Canon Yaoundé, Union Douala, the clubs like Ashanti Kotoko of Ghana, Accra Hearts of Oak, ASEC Mimosa, you'd expect to find them in the top 10, because these are clubs with great history, tremendous diaspora communities, but they all went to sleep with the evolution of social media. And so the reality is that African clubs are struggling for fan base with European clubs who are actually doing the right thing, because now when you have more African players playing in Europe, you'll find that if there's a player, for instance, Mohamed Kudus from Ghana, who's playing for West Ham. West Ham has got more fans now from Ghana. Mohamed Salah, before he even became a big star, when he moved to Chelsea and Liverpool and Roma and the rest, when he moved to Basel in Switzerland, a lot of Egyptian fans went there. He was so good that when he left, Basel signed another Egyptian player just to keep the fan base. So this is what African clubs are up against. And until and unless we get back to the basics and ensure that we look for all the young people who are content creators, who understand the dynamics of social media, our clubs will continue to struggle.
No, thanks. And you've mentioned West Africa, Nigeria, and you say they're underrepresented in the AFDB top 75, which means to say they're the lower end of the scale. And what are the primary reasons for this? And what recommendations would you give to the Nigerian clubs and other West African clubs to improve their digital performance?
Well, look, the reality is that if you look at the AFDB, you'll find that in number 16 is a second division club in Nigeria called Vandreza FC. They have, I mean, this club is probably 5 years old now. They were started just before COVID, and they didn't even play for a year because there wasn't no football throughout the COVID period. What happened with them is that they employed all the right strategies from day one, and they immediately built a fan base that got them into the top 20. They're number 16, and that's remarkable because they are a second division club. So if you look at in the AFDB, you'll find Pyramids of Egypt. Pyramids of Egypt are also very, very, very new club, and you'll find also Cape Town City, which is a fairly new club because I mean they took over a club that was all the way in Mpumalanga and moved them to Cape Town and changed the name. So Cape Town City is a new brand. So those three are the examples of what happens when you embrace social. But the classic case for me has been the growth and the fan base of Yanga and Simba in Tanzania because at the time we started, they were not in the top 10. Yes, they had a massive followership, but you find that one thing that the Tanzanians have gotten very right is just how, not just on social, but even in reality of how they organize their stadium. They've got, of course, the one fantastic stadium in Dar es Salaam, which I went back there, I think 2010, first time I went there, and I thought, amazing. I've been back there as recently as 2022 when we had the FIFA World Cup trophy tour. It still looks good. But when they have a game there, as recently as last year, also they had the AFL first games were played there. The place was speak and span. Even this last weekend, they had a game there, and it was filled up. Everything is organized to the T, so they understand what is involved, and they employ the right people in marketing, in digital, in all of the areas, and they tick all the boxes, in terms of their strategy. And so understanding that this whole system it's a business, football management, football marketing, and digital. You've got to apply the business approach to it, and by doing that, you're able to create create a following that gives you the numbers that when you go and engage with the brands, you wonder why do we have this massive brands, and then you write to them and say, oh no, just give me money because of course I am the biggest club. No, they want to see those numbers, and the numbers show. The good thing about this whole digital platforms, social platforms, is basically that on the back end, you can read and interpret all of it. So we can tell as much as the growth on a daily basis. We can tell the growth on a monthly basis. We can tell even the emotions that happen whilst the games are going on. So understanding what you do when you're playing, because for the most part you have one game a day. Now they're all on break. South Africa started again now with the MTN 8, but most of the leagues are going to start in the next couple of weeks. So you find that when they start, you have one game a week. What happens when you're not playing? On the days when you're not playing, what are you not doing? Because you find that all the fans, African fans of Arsenal, Chelsea, and Liverpool, and Real Madrid, and Barcelona, even clubs, people who are fans of Messi, they support, they follow Inter Miami. Fans of Cristiano Ronaldo follow what happens every day in Saudi. That's how it is. So you find then that there isn't just that conscious effort, and it starts with the management of the leagues, the federations. There's too much political considerations, too much nepotism, too much of this whole I've got to put my friends in position, I've got to put my cronies in positions, and that is what is keeping us back. And I'm glad that we started this a long time ago, and very happy to see the evolution today. I didn't pay much attention because I was out of the group for the period I was away. But coming back and being now very, very involved in the day-to-day research and looking at the numbers, interpreting, it's mind-blowing just how and comparing with and that's something that we want to do now, is comparing with where we were 7 years ago, and to see who's woken up from sleep. And it's the shocking thing is that, especially with Nigeria, nothing has changed, and it's embarrassing when you look at the numbers, because they could do more, and the fans are there. I mean, you only need to look at just the flip side. What happens with Nigerian fans who follow Afrobeats and all the big stars, Burna Boy, Davido, Wizkid, Rema, and the rest of them. Music is not the biggest passion of Nigerians. Football is. That's the reality. But fans will go where they are. There's an appreciation out there, or someone is offering them something, and content has got to be premium.
Correct. Yeah. So Emeka, if I was a club and I approach you and I say, Emeka, come do a masterclass on how we should develop a strategy to improve our digital presence, what would be the 3 key things that you would come and present to us?
I think the first thing we do is, I mean, we've done this a long time ago, and I think, yes, I haven't been been involved for 3 years now, but before now, even as far back as when there was COVID, a lot of people were confined to their homes, and so we got a lot of attention back then. And I remember, having presentations. The first thing we do is do an audit. We go through your entire system and look at what you have. Also look at the structure of all the platforms, and immediately prepare a report that says this is where you are, this is what you're doing wrong, and then we then next step is then to correct it. And then the final one is ensure that we have the right people in there with the right skill sets. And we run training programs. In 2019, we ran the first Digital Africa Summit, which was in Johannesburg. It was massive. And then we did in 2020 another one online. And then obviously, since 2021, I've been away, and the rest of the team didn't want to do that. But for the most part, they still kept running individual strategy sessions with leagues, clubs, and federations. But right now we have a lot more demand, because suddenly now people realize that there is the possibility that we can run a bit more of this training program. So we are available. We are keen to do all of that, and we've been engaged with quite a lot of them, because this is not the only thing that I'm involved in. So I try and make time once a week to engage with clubs and federations. But we've got a more solid team now in place, and we have a lot more interest, because people are able to see now. The funniest part of it is that a lot of the clubs don't like what the rankings look like, because they are not looking good. They look like they're not supposed to be where they are. If you look at the rankings, Al Ahly of Egypt, they've got the most titles in Africa, and they are rightly at the top. And then you've got Zamalek, you've got clubs like Sundowns are in 10th place. They won all the league in South Africa for the last 4 or 5 seasons. Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs. I mean, Kaizer Chiefs, as they're still waxing strong. The reality is that, despite the fact that Chiefs haven't won anything in the last few years, the fans have been keeping up with them, and the reason is simply that Chiefs engage with them. And this is the case with Yanga and Simba. We've seen them do well in Africa. Simba recently got to the finals of the FIF CAF Confederations Cup. And you saw them when they were recently in South Africa on a playing tour, and
Mhm.
how engaged their fans were, even though the game was far away. So the reality is, you've got to build up, and West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa need to wake up.
Mm.
Apart from, of course, and by the way, not just Yanga and Simba. You have also El Merreikh and Al Hilal in Sudan, who are massive clubs. You have Gor Mahia and AFC Leopards in Kenya.
Mm.
And
Mm.
one
Mm.
club in Tanzania that's doing well also is Azam, um, who are not, part of the big two, but they also holding quite strongly. And then,
Mm.
of course, in the DRC, you've got TP Mazembe, and a club in Botswana called Township Rollers
Yeah.
are very interesting because Botswana has a population of less than 5 million, and Township Rollers has almost 4 million followers, and that's that or over 3 million, which is per capita probably the best in the continent. It says that
Mm.
for the most part, first of all, get hold of your fan base at home, and then of course that we've got Africans in diaspora. So if I am a
Mm.
Kaiser Chiefs fan, and I live in London, or I live in Houston, or I live in
Mm.
Toronto, or in Munich in Germany, I want to know what's happening with Kaiser Chiefs. So
Mm.
the
Mm.
reality is that we've gotten to a point where it's no longer um, just about the fans who come to your games. The biggest
Yeah.
stadium in South Africa is less than 100,000, which is Kaiser Chiefs' home ground. So even if all
Mm.
the fans have to come to the game, the overall number of Kaiser Chiefs fans cannot fit into that stadium because it's small.
Correct.
So
Correct.
where else do you reach them? You reach them when there's a broadcast, and even the broadcast is available um, on cable TV, on stream, or probably on free to air. Luckily, SABC has got a streaming platform as well. But on the whole, on a day-to-day basis, where you engage with them is not only on your website, but on the social platforms, and you have to be
Correct.
giving them all the information when you sign a new player, when you have a new coach, when you have a new kit launch, when you have. So
Mm.
there is a lot that you can do, and then of course you've got a lot of the legends, and I'm just using Chiefs as an example. All the other clubs
Yes. Yes. Yes.
have massive legends as well. When you have a legend who passes away, or you have a player who has something, so whether it's negative or it's positive, you've got an opportunity and a platform to keep your fan base engaged. And that is the whole
Mm.
idea
Mm.
where you have those platforms. So I find a lot of what happens in Africa really, really surprising. Sometimes, not because I don't know that we have the management challenges of most of them not having proper structures and all of that, but just the reality that
Mm.
we've hosted the World Cup in Africa in 2010, which was a big, massive opportunity for change.
Yeah.
And 14 years down the line, there has to be we have to be better.
Mm. Mm.
Otherwise,
No,
we will
mm.
lose a whole generation of young Africans to European clubs.
No, great. Emeka, we almost come to the end of our conversation. Thank you very much for that extensive background and highlighting the key takeouts from the latest report. And lastly, where could people get hold of the report and give us your overall observations in a few seconds?
Well, we put out the reports on all the social platforms for Digital Sports Africa, and also with Result Sports, who are our partners in Germany. So you'll find us on all the key platforms, whether it's on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, on LinkedIn in particular. By the way, I just want to highlight that a lot of the clubs don't realize how important LinkedIn is, because that is where you have all the corporates, the people you're looking for. You have to be engaged
Correct.
there with them in a very unique way, not sharing everything that you share on X and Instagram and all of your fancy video. You've got to be able to bring your corporate side in that in that space to be able to offer them something for them to look at it and then decide that they want to see what else you have to offer. So that is probably our best case, because we are more B2B than we are
Yep.
B2C, because our core client base is the clubs, leagues, federations. But it will surprise you just how many brands we work with. In fact, you can go back 5 years ago when one of the new sponsors we have in South Africa, we had to do a session with them, and I'm very pleased with how far they've gone and just how much they are progressing. So that's something that we want to urge all of the clubs and federations and even players as well. Players,
No, good.
athletes, they have to be engaged there. And social media is not evil. You have to use it and use it for your own good.
There you heard it, people. Emeka Inyadika's famous words is that social media is not evil. So let's get connected on the platforms that are available to us. So thank you, Emeka, Director at Digital Sports Africa and Africa Director at the Result Sports, a German sports data agency. And he also wears the hat of Director at Van Dyke Sports and Sports Network Africa. Thank you for your time and insights, Emeka, which is very much appreciated. That's where we would leave it for now. And thank you for
Thank you very
watching.
much.
Thank you for watching Emeka and myself having this conversation on SportX, which is a channel hosted on TalkX TV. Until next time.